What's up everyone, I'm Melissa Makak from Room 51 and this is Teach the Teach on the Dice Tower, where I teach you how to teach a board game, and in this video I'll be covering Viticulture. Now this is a how to teach video, meaning I am assuming you already know how to play this game and now you're looking to teach it to other players. There are plenty of ways to teach games. This is just a way that has worked for me and could possibly help you out if you have any sort of difficulties teaching games or Viticulture in particular. Now, I'm always trying to get players playing as quickly as possible, and I always start off with three main things. I start by telling them the story behind the game to grip them, right? So for this one, you are managing your own vineyard and you're trying to crush the competition. The objective of the game, trying to gain the most victory points by the end, and then how the game ends when somebody reaches 20 victory points. Now, in order to explain what I do with this game, I think it would be a little bit easier if I bring you down to the table. So let's go ahead and do that. Now, throughout the video, I just want to say that I'll be showcasing these metal coins that don't come in the base box of the game, but you can purchase them separately and they are really cool and fun to use. They feel nice. Anyway, I think the best way to think about teaching this game is to sort of show how it gradually changes throughout the year, right? So I let them know that the game takes place over a series of rounds, and each round is called a year, and each year is broken up into 4 different seasons. Starting with the first season, springtime, over here. And I kind of just guide them through what each season does, right? So springtime, this is where you're going to be choosing when you're going to wake up and which order everybody's going to take their turns for the year. Then we'll go into summertime, where you're going to get to plant vines and give tours and things to gain some money. And then we'll go into winter, where you get to actually harvest those vines, make some wine, and fulfill some contracts. And that's where the bulk of the points will come from for this game. And from there, I actually show them the contract, showing them all the different parts of this contract and letting them know this is how you're going to get the most points in this game. And then just letting them know the symbology, right? Like, this is the kind of wine that you need to fulfill. This is how many victory points you're going to get. And then this is how much residual income you're going to start collecting once you fulfill these contracts. From there, I go into the different vine cards, saying that this is where you're actually going to get the grapes in order to make your wine. So I show them a couple of different things. One, I show them a card that doesn't involve any structure necessary, and I explain that you could plant these in your fields, and then I start to explain a little bit about the different values that you can place in these fields, pointing them back to their player board, saying like value 5, 6, 7. So you explain how that works a little bit in terms of the grapes. And then also letting them know what kind of grape it's giving them. And then I go into how some require a certain building or certain structure that you need to build on your player board, and that you'll get into that a little bit later. Then I go into how some of them actually require multiple buildings built throughout the game in order to plant the vines. Then I say that the other kind of cards that you'll come across are these winter and summer visitor cards, and you could just let them know that they're pretty self-explanatory in terms of what they do. They tell you exactly what they do, and you just let them know you could play summer cards during the summertime, and you can play winter cards during the winter season. So from there, that's when I want to explain to them how the game sort of functions, that you'll be trying to get these contracts. And this is also going to help them so that they kind of don't get confused in terms of what the strategy of this game is and how everything sort of functions. You want to show the flow of the game here, because that's what this game's really about. It's this flow of going from like making grapes to making wine to fulfilling contracts. And that's how you want to explain it to them. You'll say that so in the summertime, this is when you'll actually get to plant some of these vines, and then you'll also get to, in the wintertime, start to actually harvest these vines to get the grapes. Also in winter, for grapes, you're going to get to make wine, and that wine will ultimately help you fulfill these contracts that you're going for. And you might want to even let them know that you're going to want these contracts to know what sort of wine you want to be making. That way you're not just shooting in the dark. So right from there, you could already start having them play just a little bit. You could go right into the springtime and having them just choose. You could say a little bit about using their rooster, and that you're going to get to place your rooster on any of these spaces and choosing when you were going to take your turn. So for the whole year, you might go first or you might go fifth, whatever it might be. and that there's some sort of benefit associated with it. And you could go through the benefits pretty briefly. You could just say this is where you get to draw a green card, and then reiterating that these are the vine cards. You're going to need these vine cards in order to plant them and gain those grapes that you need in order to ultimately make that wine. This is where you could start drawing some contracts, gaining the lira, so on and so forth. And then even explaining about the temporary worker a little bit. So then you could go ahead and just let people start to pick their rooster, right? Of course, they're not going to quite know, but it doesn't make a huge difference right now in terms of when they go or what sort of benefit they're getting so early in the game. All of these benefits are pretty good. So you go ahead and let them do that. And then you say, all right, so that's springtime. So now let's go into the summertime. And this is when you start to explain some of these structures. And I usually do it in this order. I'll go here for giving a tour to gain. You just explain that because that's probably the simplest one to understand. And then you could go into how you could draw more vines, and then go over here in terms of how to actually plant those vines. And then again, bringing it back to the field board, and then just making sure everybody remembers in terms of the max value for each field. From there, you could go into playing a yellow card. That's pretty simple and straightforward. And then you could go into selling grapes and also letting them know that you could actually buy or sell your fields if you need some fast cash. From there, you're going to go into build one structure, okay? And this is probably maybe the most tedious part, not all that much, but what you'll do is you could just say that about the cost, how it's right next to the building, the structure itself, and then pretty much all of them are very self-explanatory in terms of what they do. They tell you exactly what you need to do, with the exception of a couple. You might want to explain, again, the trellis and the irrigation, how those will usually be used for vine carts. Some vines will need one or both of these structures built. The other one is the yoke, because they haven't quite heard about what harvesting is yet, or uprooting. And you could go over that really quickly in terms of like harvesting will allow you to actually turn your vine into grapes, and then uprooting allows you to just take the vine back to your hand in case you want to reorganize or whatever it is you might want to do. The other ones you're going to want to explain, and this is probably the last one you'll really have to explain, is the medium and large cellar. Just reiterate, just letting them know that this will open up, the spaces for different kinds of wine and higher value wine, and that you have to build the medium cellar before the large cellar. You want to let them know that and stress that to them. Everything else, you could just let them know that they could read it. It's pretty self-explanatory on the board there. From there, you just let them know about this action and how this can be used. Summer, winter, doesn't matter. And then right before you start playing, you could just say, now just remember in winter, this is where you're going to get to actually harvest your fields, make wine, and ultimately fulfill contracts. But for now, we're just prepping. And you could actually go ahead and start playing. You don't have to explain all the winter spots just yet. When you're done with the summer spaces, speaking about that and everything, you could go into the grande worker, letting them know about its special ability of giving you access to places that would have normally not been accessible because it was blocked. Something like that. You also want to talk about each of these benefits. I actually forgot to mention that. You want to talk about each of these benefits as you're explaining each space. So when you're talking about giving a tour, you want to say, if you go here, you gain that extra lira, so on and so forth. Once you're done with summer, you could go into winter, right? Well, so first you do the fall, and you just let them know about drawing the cards. It's, pretty self-explanatory there. But yes, once you get into winter, that's when you start explaining these spots on the board. And the order in which I would do it is by going here where playing blue card, which is a lot like playing that yellow card. This is where you could draw more contracts. So this is the next thing I would talk about, drawing more contracts. And then you could bring it over to here. It's all about connecting spots together, right? Because it makes sense to people. So this is where I could draw contracts. Then this is where I could fulfill contracts. And then from there, you could go into, this is where you actually can harvest your field, right? And this is something that you've been talking about throughout right now. So now you're going to explain exactly how that works in terms of like values and just where like even devaluing, you could talk about that. You don't necessarily have to talk about the devaluing of grapes. It'll probably come up when somebody has if they already have like a level 3 grape and now they're going to make another level 3 grape, they'll probably ask you, what do I do? And in that case, you could explain devaluing. But if you want to tell them up front, that's fine too. So you do the harvest. And then, again, connecting spots together, you could go into how to actually make wine. And you can also point their attention to this little key that's over here, which is really great in terms of how to make blush wine and sparkling wine. From there, you could go into how to gain more workers. And that's pretty much it. Then you could go into the year-end upgrades, right? How you age your grape and wine tokens, explaining that to them, retrieving your workers, and then you could go back into collecting residual payments. That's one thing that they have to know about. Just letting them know that bringing it back up again for their contract, how you might start gaining income. We don't have any right now, but you might start to actually gain some income along the way. Discarding down to 7 cards, and then around and around you go. But otherwise, that's pretty much it. So let's go on back up. So that was viticulture and how to teach it. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any sort of questions or comments, leave them down below in the comments section. Please let me know how you teach this game. I would love to know. Anyway, this has been another Teach the Teach. I'll catch you next time.